Hey everybody, well, it may not look like it, but my G1 two-stroke engine is almost back together. Everything's prepped. I'm just putting a coating of this copper gasket stuff I have that I had left over when I did my super engine, and I have no idea the quality of these gaskets, so I figured, well, hey, might as well use it. I have it. This is made for head gaskets and exhaust gaskets primarily, and I'm just going to coat it on all of them. I got a new gasket for my gear oil seal. I found a bolt to stick in here where I remove that gear drive completely because my oil pump will never ever work again. Been leaking for probably 20 years. And this seal that goes inside here, I found what is obsolete everywhere else. Mine is destroyed. I found one from Baker's Cart Supply. Take a screenshot of this. This is your part number. And I guess they have a replacement somehow. And they sent it to me. That's pretty cool. These were like maybe $10-15 range for the gasket and seal. They don't come with your other gaskets. That come with like the new piston kit that you may buy, like I did. And I've taken this and I've deburred all this edge around here with a file. It just seemed kind of rough to me. Both of these edges, I deburred this, and then I made sure that, of course, I did this somewhere else and blew it all off. You don't want that aluminum dust getting in your engine from the file. And I've checked my piston gap. Mine's pretty worn. This really could use a bore, but you feel the edge on the top, and you need to check your bore farther down. Just use your piston to push it down farther down in there, and check your piston gap. I've checked that. My spines should be fine. Didn't have to do any filing or anything. I've never done one of these engines before, so I figured out that my piston rings need to go on in this direction, both of them, just so that opening between the rings will fit around the opening of the pin there and that pin there. Okay. If you put it on upside down, that ring's not going to be able to close anyway. Close all the way, and it's just going to break as soon as you try to run this engine. This is where those two pins end up. So the top gap ends up being right here, and the bottom ends up being right there, in case you're wondering. But by far the hardest part of this, but just removing the gear is just a little snap ring, 2 washers, and there's a pin on this rod as well, and it just comes out. That pin is what connects in with the gear, and that seal is what actually seals against this surface on your primary pulley. So anyway, the hardest part of this whole thing was, without question, replacing the bearings. Okay, and honestly, there's only one truly hard part about that. Okay, they make special tools to take this casing apart to split it, and they make tools to put it back together. I did not buy either one of those. I opted for a conventional tool, and I have a 20-ton press. Okay, so I wasn't worried about putting it back together. Taking it apart was what was more figuring out, because reading how to do it online versus seeing it in person without having to watch an hour-long video. Okay, I'm just not doing that. So this is the primary tool right here. This is a bar puller that you're going to use that will separate. It will literally push that crankshaft out of both halves of this engine. Okay, of course, when you push out one half, the two halves will then be separated. And most of these bar pullers come with these extensions on it like this. So contrary to what you may believe from reading online, you do not need 6-inch bolts to attach this with. Okay, you need about 2.5-inch bolts is all you need at the longest. You really need about 2.5-inch bolts. You need 3 of them, number 8 by 1.25 millimeter, because no matter what, you're going to have a puller like this to remove your flywheel. You're going to have that bolt right there to remove that primary pulley. There's no other way it's coming off except for that bolt. And You need a steering wheel / harmonic balancer puller with 3 8mm by 1.25mm bolts. All the bolts on this engine for assembling and disassembly are the same size everywhere. Okay, on the front you have this bolt and this bolt here, bolt hole here, bolt hole here. Those are the two you thread your 2 bolts in and attach your puller to, or your pusher is really what it's doing, and push that crankshaft right out pretty easily. A lot easier than you think it's going to be. On this side, there's a bolt hole here. It's not used for anything except for pushing out this crankshaft. And there's another bolt here that's part of your gear drive attachment. It's the one bolt on there that's bigger than all the rest. Push that crankshaft right out. No problem. Okay. For me, I have a press. I pushed one side out. I took the rest of this and I put it in a press and pushed the crankshaft out using it. All right. It really simplifies things. Makes it a lot easier physically on me to do it that way. I mean, it's there. I'm going to use it. Okay. The other tools you're going to need are going to be more like a sleeve and a tool. It's going to operate a little bit differently than this. But once you've separated those 2 halves, you're a really lucky person if both bearings stay in the housing. If they do, you take this exact same puller, hook it up the exact same way, and put a socket in here and push those bearings out of your 2 casing halves. It's that easy. The same exact tool, push your bearings out. Of course, you need to remove your seals first. Now, excuse me, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Once you press those out, but what's most likely going to happen, and what's going to be the biggest problem in any of this, number one, and no matter what tool you have, none of the special bolt tools, not this tool, is going to help you, is when you push your crankshaft apart, this big bearing is going to be stuck to it. Okay, and this is the dilemma in this whole project right here, the number one problem. How do you get this bearing off? This is sandwiched up against that counterweight on that crankshaft. There's virtually no space between this bearing and that counterweight. How do you get it off? You really need this type of a bearing remover, like what I call it a plate bearing remover, that would be able to slide behind here, okay, and get behind that bearing. At that point, you can put the same exact puller on here, okay, and push against that crankshaft and pull that bearing off of the crankshaft. My problem is this puller is too small. It wouldn't fit around the outside diameter of this bearing. Literally, it would have worked if I was trying to grab the inside. There's just not enough room for me to get this puller started behind it. Some guys resort to actually cutting this bearing off with a torch, because everybody's got the same problem. This is the real problem in this whole job, getting this son of a bitch off. Here's what I did. A little bit less caveman than a torch, but it's still similar, all right? I'm not trying to save this. I'm trying to replace it. So I took 2 flat blade screwdrivers, 180 degrees apart from each other, and drove them in with a hammer, okay? I'm serious. This is no joke. It's not fun. It's scary. Make sure you wear eye protection, gloves. Drive this in here, and you will force this bearing off of that crankshaft by shoving those screwdrivers in here. It'll move enough that once I moved it some, then I could get this bearing puller behind it. They make these in a lot larger form, a lot larger hole in the middle, which may keep you from having to do that idiot stuff with the screwdriver, but I had to do something. Once I got it moving, I got this on here, tightened it up, moves it even more. At this point, you can either, like I said, use this puller to push it all the way off. I just hooked the edges of this puller in my press and push the crankshaft out the other side. Okay, this is what without question the hardest part. This one bearing being stuck to your crankshaft. For me, putting it back together, it took like 15 minutes. 15, 20 minutes. I take that half, I push the bearing in. I take this half, I push the bearing in. I'm using my press. I take this half with the bearing already in it. I support. Now I'm using my, excuse me, I should have mentioned, only press the bearings in by pressing on the outside, okay? If you're pressing on the center of that bearing, you're doing it the wrong way. You're putting pressure on all this internals that you shouldn't be putting pressure on. You use a, this is a 2-inch socket that for me, I had. You'll have to find something. It pushes on the outside and press that into the housing. The smaller bearing was 1 3/4 inches. Okay, this is what I used. Now, pressing the, you can choose either side you want to start pressing the crankshaft into that bearing, but you have to support now the inside of the bearing while you're pressing that crankshaft through it. And so for me, it was basically ended up being a 4.5-inch piece of pipe. This looks a little thin wall, but this galvanized pipe is way stronger than you think. And I just cut a piece 4.5 inches long, and I made sure and try to square up my ends as best as possible. And you can see that fits on here and allows room, especially on this side here, for the crankshaft to pass all the way through and to be seated all the way into the bore. So I'm holding this underneath my bearing, and I'm taking the crankshaft from the top and pressing it down into that bore, okay? And once you have one side done, then you're just going to flip the whole thing over and do the same thing again until your two halves come together. Don't forget to put your sealant. It's really, like I said, with a press, for me, it was simple. The other tools that you do this, that you can buy to put this together, be way harder to do. I'm not even going to tell you how to do it because I don't know. I didn't use that method. I used the press. I'm telling you, it's $250 for a 20-ton press at Harbor Freight, and I bought mine 15-20 years ago and I've used it hundreds of times. So it eliminates the fear of doing jobs like this, period. It's easy to put this together with my press. With that other tool, you're going to be doing something similar to how you took it apart, wrenching and wrenching and wrenching on everything to get it together. Press, boom, knock it out quick. Now, just a few other items. I know the torque on the head bolts are 14.5 with first pass. Second pass is 18 foot-pounds. This is your dimensions that you should be for your ring gap. And other than that, guys, it's just not a big deal. I did also use an impact gun on this bolt. Once you tighten it up good and tight, it's like one quick pull of the trigger will release that clutch. And the same thing on the steering on the flywheel. You get everything, your 3 bolts nice and level and tight. You bolt tight, one quick hit with that impact, and boom, it breaks that taper free. You have a taper on this end with a keyway, no keyway on this end, okay? Make sure when you put this together, you don't put it together backwards, okay? Make sure your keyway side is coming out your fan end, okay? This is the same size diameter bore on both sides. You could put this flywheel in completely backwards, and you're going to be taking it all back apart and taking that bearing back off again. You don't want to do that, but it ain't right. This is the big issue with this whole deal, guys. So this, I want to make sure just cover that mostly today. The rest of this is just, man, this is like nuts and bolts putting stuff together. It's not that hard, okay? Oh, one more thing. None of these kits also come with a new bearing in case you need one for your wrist pin on your thing. It comes with a new pin with a piston, but it does not come with a bearing. It even comes with some different keepers that look kind of cheap to me. I think I like this kind better. Easier to do with a pair of needle nose pliers. And but make sure and wash this one out really, really good with brake cleaner. Maybe a little compressed air, and clean it and then oil it before you put it back together. All right, goes without saying, clean all your gaskets. Everything needs to be, as clean as you can get it with some acetone or mineral spirit or something. So, all right, guys, appreciate everybody watching, and hopefully soon I'll have an update with this back in the engine and running for the first time in probably at least 10 or 12 years. So thank you for watching. See you next time.